Good afternoon from Qatar. Good morning to you all in England. Thank you for getting up so early, Chloe, for this one. It's lunchtime here in Qatar. Apologies for the slight technical issues. Qatari broadband, I think, went down yesterday evening, or at least it did in the Paul Sherlock household, which is why I'm very kindly staying for a couple of weeks at the World Cup. So today we will be discussing World Cup in Qatar, and unfortunately, expert view from Chloe, what happened yesterday, because I had to rely on the radio commentary. Not to worry. Paul, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you, my friend. We're actually in adjoining rooms, believe it or not, in Paul's apartment in the Pearl in Qatar. So welcome, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. And Chloe, you made a pretty long journey from Burnley yesterday, didn't you, to see a goalless draw?
Yeah, it was a long day for, like you say, not a lot to come back with, but it's a point. We didn't concede, so we move forward.
All right. Morning from Paul and Dana Huskisson. I tell you what, let's start first. Let's have the debrief from Saturday, Chloe. So you've made the long journey down from Burnley and the long journey back. What was it like?
Really frustrating, to be honest. They set up with like a 5-4-1, which is kind of Mark Cooper football. It's what I expected. When he used to manage us, it was really negative, and his kind of mindset is go and don't lose. And then if you score a goal, great kind of thing, especially away from home at the top of the league. They're obviously down the bottom there. So don't get me wrong, it's a great point. They came to do what they wanted to do, but it was very frustrating. We kind of must have had 80% possession. We had it all. We tried everything, different systems, tried crossing it long into the box, but obviously they're quite a big side, so that didn't work. Tried then passing it through. They've got then two bodies to our one. We tried shooting from the edge of the box, and it was one of them. Nothing was going for us. We had one cleared off the line from Kyle Cameron. Chickson then missed a header. It was one of them where it was never going to go in the back of the net. I think I texted you, Paul. It was a few minutes to go, and I was kind of like, it's not going to happen. And you were like, isn't there 2 minutes to go? And I was like, let me tell you, that ball is not going in the back of the net if we played for another 2 hours. Yeah, really frustrating. I think for me, the only thing that they could have changed is actually, I think that made me realise we do need a little bit of a bigger squad. We only really had Castro and Mitchell to come off the bench. Castro came on and played really well, to be fair to him. Offered us something different, played the ball quickly. But then obviously Mitchell came on and didn't really do a lot, but he wasn't on for very long. So I kind of looked at the bench and thought we need something else to come on here and to try and break them down. I don't think we played football quick enough sometimes. Like when we would counter-attack them, when they'd have the ball, I don't know, a few times in the whole game, and they'd have a few men in our half, we should be getting the ball off them and going straight down the other end of the pitch, just because we need them bodies not there. Don't allow them to set back up. And we were just kind of playing our own game, you know, passing it around, trying to build something. But that's so difficult when every time we put the ball in the box, they've got two men against our one. It was just really frustrating. But again, we didn't concede. And as much as it's annoying to watch football like that, it's probably one of the worst performances I've seen down at Meadow Lane in terms of how negative the football was. That's their game plan. And they've come and they've done that and executed it very well. But it just makes me a little bit nervous of how many more teams are going to come and do that to us this season. And they obviously know that it now works against us. But I'm sure they'll be looking at the videos and seeing what we could have improved. And obviously January is around the corner. So maybe we do bring a couple of players in to try and change that and just have some different option off the bench.
Chris Gosling says, don't think I've ever seen a team come with so little intent. Their prerogative, and but it's their prerogative and mission accomplished for them. Karen Knight, hello everyone. Dale Pikett, very frustrating yesterday. Maggie Grant, morning. Okay, people, you're obviously just having your coffees and joining us on the show. One other question, and then we'll bring in, he's Mr. Sherlock to you, isn't he, Chloe?
yeah.
Why is that?
In Red Hill, yeah, a while ago now, but yeah.
So you taught this young lady, Shirls, a long time ago.
Chloe, well, you old Chloe reminded me, back in the day at Red Hill Academy.
Right. Okay. Chloe, fantastic crowd, great effort by everybody connected with the football club. It's a tremendous achievement to get that level of attendance. What was the atmosphere like?
It's always a weird one when we have days like this. Obviously, we broke the record before. I think it was like 12,800 or something. And the atmosphere drops. It does. I saw a lot of people on Twitter say I'd rather have a 7,000 crowd than a 16,000.
Really?
Yeah, and I kind of get that in terms of fans that go every week, and we know what atmosphere we can create. But with a lot of them obviously being people that may never have come before, or fans of other teams with obviously the World Cup coming, it did drop in atmosphere. But I also think that was because of the game as well. Obviously, the first 5 minutes we played really well. Should have probably scored, had a corner, and the whole crowd was behind us. But when the pace dropped a little bit from that, the whole crowd did as well. I think it's a bit harsh to say you'd rather have the 7,000 than 16. Obviously, it's great for the club. Hopefully, people did see enough to want to come back. But obviously, like with the atmosphere and stuff, yeah, it was a bit more dull than normal. But I was actually in hospitality, which I thought was really good yesterday, considering that it was £10 to upgrade if you were a season ticket holder, which is incredible. Like, you can't get a 3-course meal for £10 anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And then get to watch the game. So
you can't get a pint here in Qatar for that.
Yeah, I
you can find one.
But yeah, so that's another great incentive from the club. Obviously, it was £5 a ticket anyway, but for season ticket holders to be able to upgrade, I know they were full. They had all the rooms open, and it was really nice. Obviously, they had a lot of people to cater for, but as well as the whole day went in terms of getting all 16,500 people in the ground and everything, and then putting on hospitality as well. I can't fault the club. It was excellent. But yeah, just a disappointing, not quite performance, but a result, I think.
Chris Gosling says the difference with us and Wrexham, we trusted what we do would eventually work. Wrexham would have put a centre-back up top for the last 20 and bombarded the box. That's an interesting point, Chris. Paul Huskisson, Shirls used to teach my son, that would be Chris Huskisson, in Eastwood. Looks like you've educated half of Nottinghamshire. Dale Pikett, most of the teams will park the bus when they come to Meadow Lane. Is this a sign of respect to how good we are? We'll come back to Notts in a minute. Shirls, welcome. Huge debate, I think, about the World Cup. And clearly, I think it's fair to say there have been 1 or 2 additional own goals, literally, in the past 72 hours, with the change in alcohol or further withdrawal of alcohol sales in the stadium. You've been here as a principal at the Doha British School, 3.5 years. What sort of World Cup you can give us, as an ex-Notts player, give us an ex-footballer's verdict and someone who's been in Qatar for 3.5 years? What are we going to get?
I mean, I think it's going to be very different. It clearly is. We're out here in the Middle East. It's a Muslim country. It is a conservative environment. So certainly, fans that are coming out will get a different experience from what perhaps previous World Cups have been like. But that said, there's a lot that's gone on over the last 12 years in terms of the infrastructure. The new metro is second to none. What they've built here, the development of hospitals, of the hotels, that side of things. They literally are just finishing off some of the hotel sort of buildings now. So that side of things has very much improved over the last sort of 12 years. But I mean, where I sit is very much an opportunity for change, perhaps to occur, on the back of the World Cup. Alcohol is available, but it is available in certain areas, at certain points. Yes, you can get a beer at any one of the 5-star hotels. Can you stop off at a pub on the way to the match? No, you can't. So it will be different. But I'm quite open. When I came out here, I was very much, I'm here to embrace the culture. I'm a visitor in your country. And very much being very compliant with with the rules and how things are sort of run out here. And fans will have a good experience, you know, because it is 5-star, it is very luxurious. But as I say, it will be a different experience to perhaps other World Cups that have gone by.
Chloe, what's you know, you're the younger generation. What's your take on this World Cup?
It's very different. I personally don't feel like it's kind of today, tomorrow. It doesn't feel quite real yet. I'm hoping once you start watching the games and everything, it picks up. And obviously, as far along as we get, obviously, as the country that we're going to support, it'll obviously pick up. I think the timings make a difference. I think the game tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, are you going to get much of an atmosphere? Most people are going to be at work and at school. And even if you are watching the game, it's not somewhere you choose to watch it, essentially. You're not either at home watching it with your family or out, like you say, at the pub or celebrating with friends. It's a very different environment compared to the games that are going to be on the Friday night or even the Tuesday night. So I think even that will change things, especially for me. I know tomorrow I'll be at work, and luckily working for a football club, they are putting it on in the office for us, which is great. But compared to what I'm going to experience on Friday, where I've got a table booked at a pub, it's going to be very different. So I'm hoping that the evening kickoffs, that especially the England matches, will pick up the atmosphere a little bit. But it feels very different to what kind of even the Euros felt like, being in the summer. Sun shines out. I mean, it was absolutely chucking it down in knots yesterday. It doesn't quite feel like a World Cup should be round the corner. But I'm sure everyone will pick up, especially, like I say, as far along as England get. But yeah, it feels very different. But it's interesting to hear, obviously, your guys' perspectives being out there and knowing a bit of how much of a different World Cup it's going to be. But I think the alcohol thing's interesting. But at the end of the day, if I was in your position, Paul, I'd just be wanting to go and watch the football. Like if that meant not drinking, I'd be more than happy to. If somebody said to me, "Here's, like you say, 30 tickets to go and watch as many World Cup games as you want," I'd snap your hand off. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of, especially England fans, that get the stigma of only wanting to go for the drink. And I think a lot of people will be put off, like maybe if you want to call them troublemakers or the select few fans that you get from all over the world, maybe that deters them a little bit, because kind of what's the point if you can't get a drink? So maybe you're going to get a World Cup that's less about the drinking and the drinking culture that especially you get in Europe, the European teams, and you're getting kind of the diehard football fans and the people that are genuinely interested in the football. Because a lot of people go to World Cups and don't even go to a game. You get a lot of that, especially in Europe. But it's going to be interesting, like I say, to kind of take that element out and see what we get from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you make the point, Chloe, about attending games. You know, for me, as a football junkie, I've got tickets for, I think it's 31 different games. So I am literally going to 2 games a day every day of this World Cup. Yeah, which is, and this is the first World Cup where it's ever been possible. And I think at the minute, because no one's kicked a ball yet, there has been clearly huge focus on Qatari culture, changing of rules. It's in the winter, all of which are extremely valid. I hope that once a ball is kicked, we can focus a little bit more on the football. But the point I'm trying to make is I've been to 4 or 5 World Cups, you know, and the most number of games I've ever seen at any of those is about 6. Normally, the sheer size of the country means you can't get around to other games. I was in Brazil for 3 weeks with England, and we were pretty poor. I saw 4 games. You know, it was difficult even to get from Copacabana Beach to the Maracanã Stadium, because there was no transport infrastructure, no anything. You just basically went in a taxi and queued for about 3 or 4 hours. So I saw 4 games in something like 19 days in Brazil. For someone who really goes to watch the football, this for me is heaven sent. 2 games every day. I go to all 8 stadiums. I see every country. I think it's bar Argentina, and I'm hoping to sort tickets out. They've got various systems in place where you can buy resold tickets officially through FIFA, which is a very good idea, so you don't have to rely on touts. So, you know, I'm actually parking aside the very serious issues, the moral and ethical issues. I'm actually Really looking forward to it. And I think, Shills, behind the scenes, it's going to be a very different experience for fans with transportation.
Yeah.
Every stadium is brand new. When for instance, when you go on the metro, which is free to every ticket holder, you can be on your WhatsApp talking to someone half a mile under the ground, and everything's working fine. It's very different to the London Underground, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sort of alluded to it earlier about the infrastructure now that it's in place. I mean, I've in the last sort of 10 days or so, I've been using the metro pretty much every day, and getting familiarised with the different lines and the different stadiums and the different routes. And certainly over the last week or so, you've seen the gradual increase in the number of people using the metro. In fact, I was on it this morning, 7 o'clock this morning, went out for a quick run and used the metro to get to Qatar. And it was busy then at sort of 7 o'clock in the morning. So that is one of the pluses. I think, as you said, that Paul, the ability to get to different games, as many games as you can within the period of the World Cup. The acid test will be the volume of people, because Qatar will never have experienced the volume of people that will be in the country at any one time. So one of the big question marks, I guess, will be how will they cope with the movement of such large numbers of people on the metro to the fan zones. The Albina Park fan zone has a capacity of around 40,000 people. Now there's no venue like that in Qatar that they would have experienced that before. So the management of people, I think, will be interesting, and how what was Brits are like. We don't want to stand in a queue for too long for the metro and be told you've got to go down this way and not this way. And then that's starting to happen already, even whilst you can see they've been rehearsing and practicing, even whilst it's been quite sparse. You're still having to go through these different barriers, and you think, well, where's the logic in that? But you can see what they're doing. But how will people cope with that? Will be the question I'd have. But yeah, as we've touched upon, very unique, very different. The first Middle Eastern country to host a World Cup. So I think from that respect, that is, talk about a global game. I can see the attraction to that. But as you said there, Paul, clearly, many controversies surround the appointment of Qatar.
Okay. We should give a shout out to Josh Carter, Jordan, Isaac, and Nick. I know you know at least a couple of those, Chloe. So they are heading out to Qatar on Wednesday, planning to see as many games as they can. Any other Notts fans out there, drop me a line, message. We'll give you a shout out. They are the guys that when you see a Notts County flag at England games, that's them. So you know a couple of those guys, don't you, Chloe?
Yeah, I know them all. So yeah, they've been to a lot of England games, to be fair to them, home and away for a while. I think trying to pick up the points of the World Cup. So I'm happy that they've all got out there.
Yes, so they're out on Wednesday. Now, what I think a lot of the debate about Qatar, human rights, treatment of migrant workers, and clearly it's a huge topic at the moment. I think a lot of the way in which people approach this is often a generational thing. How big a deal is it for you, Chloe, and talking socially and ethically, for you and your friends and people of your age group?
Yeah, I think that it's clear that a lot has gone wrong, essentially, that lives shouldn't be lost over building stadiums, full stop. Whether that we saw it at the Olympics in Brazil, not quite to the same level. But like you say, you've got migrant workers who are on next to nothing. The health and safety is clearly not good enough. I saw a post the other day that kind of compared to the lives lost compared to other World Cups and other like Olympic games, and it's not good enough. We're all better than this, no matter what part of the world that you're in. Everybody knows that this shouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? So there's clearly a lot that's, like you say, ethically that's not being done clearly. You obviously know better than me, Paul, living out there and everything that goes on. We obviously only see the media, and of course everything's going to be highlighted negatively. So obviously it's easy to say, everybody can say, well, no life should be lost. yeah, it is very interesting. Like you say, once a ball's kicked, maybe everyone forgets about that. But I don't think we should be forgetting about lives lost. But at the end of the day, it's done now. Everybody in the media, and there was an interview where Gary Neville was getting hounded by a panel. Like, why are you going out there? Why are you still covering the games? Surely you should be at home, not supporting what's happened, essentially. And his argument was, obviously it's kind of his job. I understand that he has a say in whether he wants to go out there or not. But he essentially said, well, I could stay at home and do nothing, or I could go out there and still do my job, but highlight the issues. And then the counter argument to that was, well, you could stay at home and still kind of speak about the issues. So it's a very tricky one for obviously even commentators and presenters and pundits that are going out there, because it's really a conflict of interest. Obviously, that's your job. And if anybody said to you as a journalist, especially, go and cover the World Cup, I mean, you'd be silly not to, no matter where it is. But obviously, then you've got the like ethical, like everything that's gone off in the World Cup. It's very difficult. I kind of understand everyone questioning them, but at the end of the day, it is their job, and hopefully they can obviously outline the issues and not kind of go past everything, because we shouldn't look past lives lost. And no matter everything else that's gone off in Qatar as well, but it's a very interesting World Cup, and like I say, it might go very well or it might get worse from here. We don't know yet; it's not started, but obviously, like Paul says, there has been a lot of positives in terms of the infrastructure and everything that's gone into place and being able to get so many games in. But obviously, everyone just wishes that that was kind of the biggest point. We all wish that there weren't all the ethical issues to go with it as well. So it's very interesting, but I personally can't like slag off people like Gary Lineker and Neville and Carragher if he's going out. I'm not sure if he is, but because at the end of the day, people dream of going to a World Cup just to cover football. But I definitely understand where the comments are coming from as to you shouldn't even be going out there. But at the end of the day, how annoyed would everybody be if there was no coverage of the World Cup? If the whole country kind of, as a nation and as the broadcasters, went, no, enough's enough. I think people are kind of understand it, but everyone would be more annoyed that they had no coverage of the World Cup whatsoever. So it's very difficult. There's many arguments, and I don't think you can come to the bottom of it. But yeah, we've got to highlight the issues, definitely. But everybody wants to see the World Cup at the same time.
Paul, you live here. You also have just about every British TV channel known to man and woman on your big TV screen. You're obviously seeing, I think it's not just British, I think you probably call it Western Europe reaction to the staging of the tournament here. Sometimes there's a different lens through which African countries view the World Cup here. Asian countries view the World Cup here, because this isn't a European Championships. This is a World Cup. Do you think in 28 days' time or whatever it is, we'll be talking about a successful World Cup?
I think once the first game kicks off today and we start talking about the football, then I think inevitably that will, I hope, will become the main attraction. But I think rightly so, people want to raise the issues and highlight the concerns, and use the World Cup, use sport as a vehicle to bring about change in certain areas of the Middle East, for example. And whilst me being out, I've learned so much in terms of different religions and how Muslims conduct themselves and how they live their lives, and how you speak to them, how you present yourself to them, and how not to be offended, and so on and so forth. So it is a very, very different culture. And take me, lad from Nottingham, it's certainly opened my eyes up in terms of a wider world and life beyond the shores of the UK. And yeah, I mean, as I said at the start, use this as a vehicle, use this as an opportunity to raise awareness, whilst also though being understanding of the country that we're in, and the values that a different set of people have. And I think that's that for us, perhaps as a Westerner, is perhaps the hardest thing to do. But yeah, I really hope it does go well. Having lived here now for 3.5 years, and it's all been about the World Cup. It's all been about this build up to the tournament. And I do, for the state of Qatar, I hope it goes well. I hope it's a success, and that perhaps people learn from it, like I have while I've been out here. Learn so much that perhaps other people may do the same, and there could be an opportunity, as I say, to bring about change, whatever that change may be.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and sometimes I think football gets a degree of unfair focus, but I guess that comes with the territory of being the most popular, most prized sport in the world that transcends just about every single country. Qatar has a Grand Prix. I don't see thousands of people saying we should be blacking it on television and all the rest of it. The arms trade, from a lot of it based in England, Western Europe, and America, certainly supply an awful lot of multi-billion dollar and pounds and euro contracts to the Middle East. And why shouldn't they? In terms of generating armed forces and those sorts of things. But the moment football comes here, then becomes a huge debate and a huge focus. And I think the phrase is sport washing that now seems to come into play. So I'm a bit torn on the issue because I think it will be, in terms of facilities, a very good World Cup. Clearly, winter to summer, I don't think it's going to transfer very well. Although what I would say is, if England win the World Cup, how many people in England will not say it's the best World Cup since 1966? That fundamentally will be the reality of the matter. Chris Gosling says, whilst I agree there are numerous morality issues, football is becoming too politicised. I had not read this just as I was talking there. Heard an interviewer asking Gareth Southgate his opinions on Iran supplying modules, or I'm presuming some form of arms, to Russia. Missiles, yeah. When has a football manager ever been seen as a credible candidate to asking or answering questions like that? Yeah, so I think it's a very difficult one. And my lad Harry, he was talking to me about fake fans, which I know has got a lot of traction in the UK, Chloe. And I said, it's funny you say that. I said, because literally yesterday afternoon, I was on the metro, because I've already been round all 8 stadiums, been round all of them already, whizzing around and having a look. And there's no one on the metro. And I'm sat on the train minding my business. And then literally 100, probably I would say, from the Indian Peninsula, migrant workers, I am assuming, all pile onto the train. There's about 100 of them. They all know each other. And about 50 of them have got Brazil shirts on. And 50 of them have got Argentina shirts on. And I thought, this is a bit bizarre, because they all look like new Brazil shirts and new Argentinian shirts. And they clearly knew each other. And they all got on at this one stop. Yeah. And I thought, that's a little bit bizarre. And they all went in, and I got off at the same at the Souk Waqif, which is kind of like the old centre, the Lions, Council Square in Nottingham-esque language. And they all got off there, and off they went away. And there's been a big debate, hasn't there, Chloe, about inverted commas fake fans. I have to say, and clearly it's only the first day today, Shirls, I've not seen many supporters yet, indigenous supporters from the various countries.
No, I'd agree with you, absolutely. I mean, I was in the Souk, was it yesterday morning for breakfast, about 8 o'clock, 7:30, met with my Arabic friends, and there was a group of Mexicans or Mexico fans, and the TV crews were following them around. Now, had they travelled from Mexico to be here? I wouldn't know. I'm not sure. Are they expats living in Qatar with a Mexican background? Probably, more than likely. I did actually see on the metro a group of German fans, and I think I got the impression that they had travelled over, and they a small group all kitted out in the German flags and German shirts. But no, I've not seen. I've not. I mean, this is my first World Cup. My brother's been to a couple. This is my first. So I've not. I don't feel I've seen the groups of English fans that perhaps we would expect. The Dutch. What I did see, actually, I was at the ticket office. I went to the DECC yesterday just to sort my brother's hire card out, and there was some Cameroon ladies all dressed up in like the red, the green, the yellow, these big frocks with the what was the vuvuzela things from South Africa. There's some horn that were playing, and they were dancing. And I thought, this is what I would imagine the World Cup fan experience to be. Those cultures all mixing. So that was in isolation. That was one example where perhaps there was that thing, but it's certainly it's not widespread at the moment across Qatar. It's very much in isolation. But that said, the first game starts today. Will we see an influx of fans now over the weekend? Probably, hopefully so. There's obviously with the match tonight, we're going to head up to one of the fan parks, the fan zones, and get experience of what it's like to be in that environment. So I'm hoping that the more genuine fans, if you like, from around the world will start to arrive and start to give that sort of vibrant sort of feel that a World Cup has. We were at the Corniche, went for a walk through the Corniche. There was meant to be a parade that was taking place, and the Corniche was dead. This was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and me and my partner, we were like walking down, thinking, "Crikey, is this it?" And I fully expect that things will improve and get livelier as the days and weeks progress.
Chloe, you mentioned the Euros. For me, if I wasn't here, there's 4 games a day for something like the first 8 games of the tournament, and I would be sat at home trying to get a session at Virgin Active Gym in between somewhere, right? I'd be watching all 4 games every day. Is it going to be like that for rank and file people? For instance, do you think the nation is going to grind to a halt tomorrow lunchtime because England are playing, or is this tournament not yet recreating what we would have seen at previous Euros and Worlds for you and people that you know?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to tell for me personally, because the previous World Cup and Euros, I've been either a student pretty much, or working.
You've not been doing a lot then.
So I'd be watching all the games, like you say. It was kind of easier for me to, like you say, no matter where in the world it was, stick them on. It's obviously difficult for me now with being at work. Obviously, we'll get to watch the England game, but I think look, everybody always gets behind England and the whole country does come to a halt. But I think that'll come, if it's going to come at all, that'll come, like I say, the Friday night one. I think obviously everyone will be behind them tomorrow, but you're not really going to be able to tell if the country's come to a halt because everyone's at work. And yeah, you might not be getting as many phone calls as you usually do, or people coming in where you work because England's on. But I think that's the only way you'd really be able to tell. But other than that, everybody's really going to be in work in schools. I know my brother, they've said to the school that they're going to put it on. So that's probably the place where you're going to find the most people watching it at the same time in a school, because everybody else, 1 o'clock afternoon on a Monday, the pubs aren't going to be full unless you're not working. Do you know what I mean? So it's a difficult one. And like I say, hopefully the atmosphere in this country does pick up. That's what everybody wants. And hopefully, like I said earlier, the further we get along and hopefully we keep getting them night games, that's the best thing that can happen to us. I know this is obviously a selfish point from like somebody in the UK, and that's going to be very different to someone who's in America and someone who's in Australia. But we can only talk about from an English perspective and what the World Cup means to us. We know what it's like being in England to watch a World Cup. I don't know if we're going to quite get to that. I think especially because it's in winter as well, like the pub gardens. I know the Trent Navigation, which is next to our ground at Notts, they've put up a massive screen, and yeah, they've got cover and stuff, but it's going to be absolutely freezing. Like we're into the single figures now, and it's not quite the same going to sit for 3 hours before a game. I remember being in pub gardens and stuff hours before kickoff in the summer, because otherwise you wouldn't get a seat. Whereas I think people will be turning up for kickoff and be like, I can stand this weather for a couple of hours to watch England and then I'll be gone. So it's very different, taking into the time zones, taking into the weather, and obviously everything else that's gone on. It's all like a bundle of confusion at the minute. But I'm hoping it does pick up. But like you say, it went a bit mad with the fake fans. I think maybe, like you two were saying, Qatar were probably expecting more of an influx of fans to begin with. Obviously, want to show a positive portrayal of the World Cup and everything that's happening in Qatar, and then probably looked around and was like, we have not got enough fans here to make out obviously the thousands that it looks like they're being filmed. So it is strange because, like you say, when they filmed all the fans, there's lots of photos going around, there's lots of videos going around, and they all look from the same culture. Obviously, nobody wants to assume, but literally looking from an outside perspective, if you put all of them fans together, they've got all their different shirts on from different countries. It's not hard to kind of imagine that they're all from the same kind of district, same kind of area of the world. So it's interesting, but like I say, hopefully, like we was discussing earlier, Paul, that it's quite expensive as well for England fans. That's another thing that's been plastered all over the media. These hotels that they're putting up, obviously not the 5-star ones, but the ones that fans are trying to be able to afford that are like £200 a night. It's very expensive, but maybe, like you say, Paul, they're staying elsewhere and then traveling in. It's going to be interesting, especially for you guys being out there, to know the contrast between the week leading up to the World Cup and actually who's there during the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to hear from you guys as it goes on, to see what's kind of changing, whether you're getting an influx of fans just on the day of the game, obviously, for that country, or whether they're sticking around. So it'll be very interesting. But yeah, the whole fake fans thing, it went absolutely mental on Twitter. So it was interesting to see, definitely.
Well, I've got some friends in Dubai that have bought a package, and it's cheaper for them to do the flight, fly in, fly out, and have the experience in Dubai. I've got some friends that are driving. It's a 6-hour drive, from Dubai through Abu Dhabi, across the Saudi border, and then into Doha. So there are different ways that people are choosing to do it. But you're right. The cost of this World Cup as opposed to others is, I would imagine, astronomical. And I think, Paul, you mentioned to me about the timing. Back at home, it's difficult times for people back at home in the build up to Christmas. Do people really have a spare X amount of money to afford to come out to Qatar at this time of the year? So I think that perhaps is the economics behind it, or perhaps is another factor.
Yeah, it's interesting the point you make about accommodation for fans, and it's not cheap, Chloe. And I've driven past where basically they look like shipping containers. That's basically what they are. Imagine an incredibly downgraded Haven holiday camp home. 1/5 of the size with one bed in it and a toilet. And a small air conditioning unit. So there's that contrast, if you like. Although I guess from your generation, Chloe, I suppose when you stay at Glastonbury, it's not great, is it? Do you know what I mean? As in, you're just sleeping in a tent, aren't you? I think Qatar is a place of massive contrast. I mean, you will hear a lot about how much alcohol costs. You will hear a lot, about how expensive it is. When I was in the centre of Qatar for a couple of nights before coming up to the Pearl, where Shirl's is, and that's very, very nice. The American national team are 200 yards that way. Ian Wright, Lee Dixon, and all the ITV crew are 200 yards that way in the other hotel. So very palatial. But if you go into the centre of the souk and where a lot of the migrant workers are based, I went out, had like a South Indian curry. You can't get any alcohol with it. Orange juice, that sort of thing. Do you know how much that was? £4. So you can eat here incredibly cheaply as well. The 5-star restaurants clearly are very expensive, but there is a subculture within Doha that is incredibly cheap. And the other thing I would say, and this is not just Doha, but I feel, cue something to happen to me now, I feel far safer in Doha than I ever would in Nottingham on a night out, certainly London, because, you hear a lot about the police, but to be honest, it's a very, very safe environment, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is one thing I'd certainly, reinforce. People are here, it's a population of 3 million people, of which 10% are Qataris. So the rest
Yes.
of the rest of the people here are here because of their job, because of their work, and they're all here to earn tax-free money to send home to their families. So, it makes sense clearly for them to abide by the laws of the land, which people do, because their jobs are at risk if they don't. And it is quite a, you say we do sort of, state. And if you can cope with that, if you're compliant and you follow the rules, it's absolutely fine. But I totally agree with you. If people talk about, not locking the front doors, and I know I'll leave my phone and wallet on a table and go to the bar or go to the bathroom or whatever, and wouldn't bat an eyelid. But I wouldn't do that back in Notts, or back in England, for example. So it is far, far, far safer. It really is. It's a lovely place for families, for children to be brought up in terms of, the facilities, the amenities, the sun shines every day, that side of things. But yeah, certainly a very, very, very safe country.
We'll come back to Notts for the last part of the programme in a moment. We've got a few comments coming in from Chris and one or two others. Chloe, we've talked a lot about the World Cup, not actually mentioned the football really once yet, have we? You've obviously not had quite as many years of hurt of England not winning major tournaments as myself and Paul. What do you think this year?
This is another thing as well. I think this is also why the country isn't as kind of ready for it, because we obviously had the Nations League, which there's a lot of speak about whether that should be a competition at all, whether it's too many games, whether we're just kind of being a little bit ridiculous now with how many international games we can get in competitions. But we did very poorly in that. We kind of haven't won a game for a while, and obviously chopping and changing. So the last bit we've seen of England hasn't been good. There's been a lot of talk in the press about obviously who he's picked. I think it wasn't really a surprise, the team. A couple of names in there, obviously. Maddison, no one thought really he was going to get picked, and then he obviously came along, and then obviously Ivan Toney missing out, but it's then come out about his betting, so maybe that's why he's missed out. But everybody else, it was kind of expected, especially for a Southgate side and what we've seen in the past few years. But obviously, we've had two great competitions back to back, the World Cup and then the Euros. Obviously, coming home trophyless still, but obviously everyone got behind them because we're getting to finals and semi-finals, which is something we haven't done for a long time, like you say. But obviously, the most recent competition we've seen, we were very poor. So it's hard to kind of be like, oh, we're going to have a great World Cup. Hopefully we do. Everyone's hoping that. And obviously we've got quite a nice group, really. If you could pick anyone, you'd want to be in this group personally. But it's then seeing past that. Obviously, when we come up against good sides, generally, like in the last World Cup, we played Belgium twice and lost twice. So we had quite a good run other than that. So it is going to be difficult to see what side of the draw we come out. Obviously, everybody's got to adapt as well, especially we keep talking about Europe. The weather as well, something we haven't really spoken about. There was a few clips from England, the England team training out there and just stood in front of this massive fan, like absolutely dying in the heat. But I've obviously seen in the stadiums, they've got all the air conditioning and stuff. So, but that's going to be another element, definitely. As much aircon as you can put in, you're still in incredible heat, especially, like I say, from Europe going into that climate where you're not already climatized to it. I mean, they've gone from single figures in England, and I imagine a lot of, especially Europe and other places in the world, are going from that cold temperature to the heat. So that's another element as well that's difficult. But yeah, it's hard because we're not going off the back of England doing really well recently. But again, it's not a competition that we go out to kind of win or anything like that. I don't think they're that bothered about it and such. So compared to a World Cup, obviously they'd much rather us win a World Cup than the Nations League or anything like that. But it is hard when obviously we didn't do so well recently. So it's going to be interesting as the competition goes on and we play better oppositions, then you kind of get to grips with where England are at for this World Cup, I think.
Who's your money on, Paul?
So I'm thinking Brazil, to be honest. I know they're the favourites, aren't they? But I think, the depth of squad that they've got. You know, we're out in a climate that would suit, you know, the South Americans. So no, I don't think they'll be too far away. Neymar's big out here in terms of PSG and the links with Qatar. So certainly he'll be popular, as will Messi. But no, I think Brazil. But you know, obviously my heart's with England. I mean, I think, you know, subliminally there could be some positive news that's come out of, you know, Benzema's news this morning in terms of France, Senegal and Mane, you know, not being available. I had Senegal being mapped out for us in the last 16, and then France in the quarters. So, you know, with those two players not available, does that give us, you know, assuming we get out of the group, does that give us a better route possibly, you know, through then to face Germany in the semis? You know, could that potentially be another opportunity for us to, you know, to get one over on the Germans? And I see an England Brazil final is my sort of pathway through. Still trying to get a ticket for the final. That's they're quite hard to get hold of. You can get hold of them, but they are, you know, the costs are through the roof. But yeah, I can see it. I would an England Brazil final would be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I do actually think England have got a real chance. I think what Gareth has shown is that he's a tournament manager. You know my views on results and friendlies and all the rest of it don't really matter a jot. It's what you do in the tournaments. And Gareth's tournament record, if you can't take Alf Ramsey out of it because you're managing them, but we were at home. But if you just parked Sir Alf out of the situation, his tournament record is better than every single other England manager in the history of the game for us. So I wonder whether we might get it right here. I wonder too, a little bit like when Greece won the Euros 14, 16 years ago now, and they were just such a wild card winner. No one in the, you know, they can't win it. I wonder if there's a wild card somewhere that comes through because it's in a different location, it's a different time of the year, and I wonder whether if all of the big countries somehow or other all fall by the wayside. You know, France, you know, clearly Brazil and Argentina, man for man, would have the best squads. Argentina normally every tournament but never quite do it. Probably it is realistically going to be Messi's last chance, isn't it? You know, if you're looking for an each way bet, as they say in that sort of parlance, I wonder if someone like Holland might just surprise a few people and sort of come up on the blind side, so to speak. Anyway, Cyprus ref says, Paul, the heater's obviously got you. I don't know whether he means, Holland or whatever, but we'll see. There's a good point. We'll come back to Notts now, from Chris Gosling, which I'd not fully appreciated, but ex-ticket office Notts, I'm sure you can fill me in on all the fixtures coming up. For me, the England games are filling the gap until Notts play again. England could be home before we all set off for Scunthorpe. What a fantastically sobering thought from Chris. He goes on to say the England games are filling the gaps until Notts play again. I mean, very weird. Gary Smithhurst, I couldn't have any less interest in the World Cup. Bob H says, me too, Gary. So most Notts fans will know I'm a bit out of the loop at the minute. There's no Notts game now for 2 weeks then, Chloe, yeah? Because the Barnet game is off next week, right?
Yeah, so they got through in the FA Cup, which we don't like to talk about. We have a very, very poor run. I say run, we played one game and lost a morale. So that one's been rearranged with Tuesday night in December, I think. I think it's quite late on. So we haven't got a game, I believe, until Scunthorpe. There might be. I think that's it. I think that is the next one because I was hoping to come down next week and try and make the home game, which is really frustrating because I now can't make the Barnet game with it being a Tuesday. But yeah, so it's quite a good point that it's like we're having our own mini World Cup break at Notts. It's crazy that it just so happens that we're then not playing, so we can supposedly get behind England a bit more, I suppose. So he's absolutely right. England is filling that gap. It feels like a long time since we are going to be playing again, definitely. So whether
that's home for the best part of a month, is it now?
Pardon?
I say we're not at home for the best part of a month again now, are we?
No, they were saying in hospitality that we're also not at home on a Saturday either. For a long time, I think. Obviously now the Barnet games on a Tuesday, the Boxing Day games obviously not on a Saturday. It's a bit of a weird one, the Boxing Day, and there might be another one as well. And I think they were saying that that wasn't a Saturday either. So we're talking a long time away from a Saturday home game, which is interesting. But I don't know how it's going to work for us. I think we maybe needed a game to bounce straight back from Saturday's game. I think it was one of them games where we really needed to then play on the Tuesday and win and kind of get it back in our system. But it'll be interesting, and I'm sure Luke will get them sorted for some type of way. But I'm sure there's not a game in between them now.
Cyprus ref is taking issue with me over England. No chance. I have got more chance of winning the lottery, and I don't even do it. I'm not so sure, Cyprus. I think we've got half a decent chance. Chris Gosling not to turn 160 years old on Friday, and not even a game to celebrate. Gary Smithhurst, ridiculous that Notts have no Saturday home game during December, with the opportunity of increased crowds due to the World Cup break. Yeah, that's quite right. To do the National League should be more flexible to allow clubs to rearrange games. Let's wrap up a bit with Notts, Chloe. Clearly, quite a few people, bit of doom and gloom after yesterday. I think one of the, albeit, it's a home draw. There is a view that our squad numerically isn't great. And the most overused phrase in football that is applied to every single manager, right, including the most successful ones. I mean, like Pep Guardiola, Man City lose to Brentford. He's got no plan B. He's got no. They always churn that one out. I mean, how much do you view yesterday as a small blip? Or is there a little bit more to it, given we lose top spot to Wrexham, the bragging rights, and all of those sorts of things?
I think it's more the aspect of I'm nervous about a lot more teams coming and doing that against us, and us not being able to break them down. Like I say, we did try many different things. We had 80% possession. We tried building up. We tried crossing it long. We tried crossing it on the floor. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of shots deflected. Like there was one off the line. So at the end of the day, maybe it was just one of them days where somebody got a leg in the way every time we had a shot, kind of thing. So I'm hoping it's a blip, but I do think it did make me realise that maybe we do need a couple of extra players, because obviously we've not got many injuries. I think a big miss is still Jim O'Brien. I think in games like that, he gives us something different. And obviously it was difficult because we started so attackingly. We had Austin, we had Rodriguez, we had Scott and Langstaff, and then Palmer. It was very attacking. Whereas if we'd have started Bajrami, maybe if we did find ourselves too defensive, we could have brought Austin on. Whereas you kind of looked at the bench and was kind of like, well, it's like for like at the minute. Or maybe if we had Jim O'Brien, we could have at least brought him on and he gives us something different. Whereas like Castro came on and did well, but he kind of couldn't provide us anything that we didn't really already have, as much as he played a couple of good balls. And then obviously Cairo Mitchell came on and then couldn't provide anything else either. And then everyone else on the bench was defensive. We had like Bajrami and Rawlinson, and I think Francis as well. And you kind of look at the bench and think, in a game like this where we need something to dramatically change and shift, because we've tried for 90 minutes in the end doing the same kind of thing. Maybe we do need something different. And obviously you look at our squads, and when you turn the program over, if you do buy a program, you notice that every team that comes that have got more names on the team sheet. And I'm one for quality over quantity, and we've said it for a long time. And Notts have always been really the other way around. There's been a lot of people at the end of the season that you'd be like, maybe these 6 players I'd definitely get rid of before you even kind of look deeply into it. So I kind of like that we're using as many people as possible. We're sending people out on loan, so they're not just kind of, obviously with the 5 subs, they're not just sat around in the top of the Pavis watching on. If they're not on the bench, they're going out and getting some football. But I do think that we are a couple of players short just to kind of give a change and a plan B as such. But when it works, we look great and we look unbeatable. And don't get me wrong, I think us and Wrexham definitely have the best 11s in in the league, and we've shown we can play against Wrexham and show them up, and against your Chesterfields and people like that. 11v11 on our day, especially when a team kind of comes at us a little bit. We prefer that to teams that obviously sit back. But it does worry me a little bit that teams at the bottom or mid-table are going to come to Notts as a top 1 to 3 team in the league and go, we'll take a point here. We'll just stick 2 banks of 5 and that's it. So we'll stick a leg out. But I'm hoping it's just a blip, but we definitely have things to learn from yesterday.
Gary Smith has sent us a few points. At best, it was a small blip yesterday. Notts played well, and on another day, an early chance goes in, and it's a totally different game. I'd have had Fidel on earlier, as he will at least have a dig from the edge of the box. One pass too many at times yesterday. It was very congested through the middle and was like trying to thread a needle with some of the passes. And one or two people I know, Mark Cooper's not everyone's cup of tea. I mean, look, if you look where Yeovil are and the problems they've been having, he's put out a plan and he's executed his plan. You know, Notts have put out a plan and we're not been able to execute. So I don't think you can necessarily dig out Yeovil or Mark Cooper. His job, I'm sure, yesterday was get a clean sheet. Yeah, anything else is a bonus. I mean, even in your days, Paul, did fans often talk, you know, when things didn't go according to plan? I'm not sure which managers you would have played under at Notts, but, you know, were people always talking about no plan B?
Yeah, that's. I mean, when you mentioned that earlier, I think how many times do we all hear that? You know, it's your go-to sort of statement, isn't it? When things aren't going well, I know he hasn't got a plan B. Well, you know, what do you mean? Give me an example. What do you want him to do? You know. Yeah, mine was Nick Walker was the manager when I was there. Russell Slade, Nick Walker. So yeah, that was my experiences with them.
Yeah, Gary Smith says Wrexham have the same issue with teams parking the bus. Yeovil have had a point out of Notts, Wrexham and Chesterfield. Have they really? Well, it's a pity they can't execute that game plan into an attacking one against other teams. Chris Gosling says the problem is to make us better, we need players with serious quality. Players with serious quality would expect to come in and start. Not easy to find quality who would be happy to be a super sub. Okay, well, we're coming up to the hour mark. I think that will wrap it up for today from Qatar. I've got to do a few more fact-finding missions. I've got to do a bit of work for the Americans while I'm out here. So I need to go off and do a little bit of that. By the way, I'm imagining it's even wetter and chillier in Burnley, Chloe, than it is in Nottingham. It's about 93 here. I went for a run this morning, about creased me, I have to say. Although the temperatures plummet quite a bit in comparison for the evening games. But I think the people that have got 10 o'clock kickoffs your time, 1 o'clock our time, I tell you, it is hot. So I would imagine the pace of those early games, after you've had your breakfast, if you've got the day off or whatever and watching it, I would imagine they will be pretty slow because it is still, although it's nearly December, it is still very, very hot. Hang on, it is a good note. It is a good note. Chris Gosling, I was on the terraces at Fratton Park to see Shirl's only goal for Notts in a 1-1 draw. Do I get a badge or something for that? Remember the goal, Shirls? Talk us through it.
The ball was the only one I was bound to. Yeah, it was the opening game of the season, wasn't it? Away at Portsmouth, Fratton Park. I think Michael Johnson went down early on, and I came on after about 5 minutes. And yeah, the memory I've got is the ball coming in, it being cleared at the edge of the box, and me just coming onto it and striking like a half volley, and then just sort of nestled into the goal, and then I just carried on my run then over to the away supporters. And I think you've seen there's a little photo still in my apartment of that, Paul, with Gary McSwegan and Dean Yates hanging on my back and round my neck. So yeah, Chris has got a good memory.
There you go. You see, our flock knows everything. Gary Smithers, I've not heard of this one. Any truth in the rumour John Bostock is training with the club? I have no idea. That doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's false. I've no idea. I did check in with the club on a couple of things that one or two of our flock have asked me to ask, and while I'm remembering them, and technology-wise, we're actually able to broadcast today. Andy Eason asked about evening kickoffs. And given the energy crisis at the minute and the cost of energy, would the club be looking to bring forward early kickoffs? So I have done a little bit of investigation, and there are no plans by the club to bring forward evening kickoffs. So no plans. So, by that, it ain't happening, I think. I shouldn't really say this, but and you won't have seen this, Shirls, but Chloe, you might even know what I'm thinking here. Do you remember on the fans forum when there was a gentleman from one of the independent supporters associations who had a list of questions as long as your arm, talking about earlier kickoffs and all the rest of it? I wonder, given the debate about fake fans, I wonder if the Qataris had bunged him a few quid to be a fake Notts fan, because I think some of his questions caused a bit of mirth among Notts fans watching. And I have to say, for Nick Richardson, Christoph, Alexander and Luke, they deserved a medal for patience in the stream of those questions. But no plans for earlier kickoffs over the winter months, despite the energy. Notts have asked me to point out they've got the new energy efficient LED light bulbs in there as well. Although I did read something from Darren McAntony at Peterborough. He's normally on the money. He was saying that the floodlight cost is not a lot. It's a few £100, believe it or not. It clearly depends on what floodlights you've got, but he said it is not a major financial issue. I think other than that, so we as Notts County, now having made a strategic withdrawal out of the FA Cup, can now focus entirely on the World Cup, Chloe. So no excuses. You can see plenty of games we can all watch. We'll be back later in the week, probably after the England game. We'll probably get Mark Stallard on and have a chat. But I hadn't fully appreciated it's just going to be such a barren period for Notts. Never mind. Shirls, thank you very much. We're off on our business now, aren't we, out and about? Chloe, I'll leave you to get on with whatever you do on a Sunday in Lancashire. We all, hope that the job is going well for you, and full marks for continuing to commute to watch Notts.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'll continue as long as I can. So, like I say, luckily I can go to the Scunthorpe game, which is one that I really wanted to go to this season. So I'll be looking forward to that one.
Excellent. Thanks again, Shirls. I look forward to catching up with you. We're keeping an eye on Twitter and social media. We'll be looking to probably come out probably about Wednesday, post England's first game against Iran and ahead of the Friday night game with the US. I'm hoping to have one or two of my journalistic mates, Henry Winter, Ollie, Holt, some of those, although those guys are fairly busy at the minute, I think, for obvious reasons, but we'll hope to get one or two of those. Chris Gosling says, make sure you make use of the sun cream, Paul. Am I going to get red? I don't know. I better get some, hadn't I? Anyway, thank you again, everyone, for listening. Sorry it's taken us a little bit of a while to get this show up and running, but Qatari broadband had a bit of a wobble last night, so we weren't able to join you. But we look forward to welcoming you again later this week. Take care for now. Bye-bye.